Executive Board likely to take place next summer or fall. More details at srnnews.com. I'm John Scott.
Let's get it started in here.
The viewpoints of Frank the Verse Thomas, his co-hosts, and callers are not necessarily those of any particular religion or denomination. They may or may not be the views of Webcast One Live, the cleaning guy, the woman who brings in cookies, the parking valet, the staff of The View from the Pew, Jill King, Lucinda, the graphic design lady, Justin, Bob, Brian, Linda, or anyone else of sound mind or questionable mental capacity. Should you be offended, provoked, triggered, intimidated, shocked, confused, or inspired to think independently, call our studio lines at 515-442-KPOG and join the conversation. After all, it's your voice we want to hear. Now, live from the Jordan Crossing Studios, here's your host, Frank the Verse Thomas.
Well, welcome to View from the Pew today. I am your host, Frank the Verse Thomas, filling in for Brian. Brian's going to do a stint for a week, I think. He said he's got a lot to talk about. He's been watching a lot of news media coverage of late, and he's got a lot of stuff that's on his mind he wants to talk about. You believe that? If you believe that, I got some oceanfront property on the western half of Iowa for sale. Brian will be out getting some air on his skateboard. Skate or die. Come on now, Brian. Jill, I'm waking Jill up. Like, wake up, Jill, or Santa ain't gonna visit your chimney and get stuck. Oh, that Jill, I don't know what's up with her. She's always thinks it's so hilarious that Santa gets stuck in the chimney. Because it's really Dad. It ain't Santa. And the family's poking fun and throwing donuts at him or something because he's stuck in the chimney. I don't know what Jill's problem is. I guess she just don't like Dad and Santa because she wants him to get stuck in the chimney all the time. Oh, that Jill. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with that gal. She's... Oh, gonna wake that girl up. All right, I've got some notifications here. Let's see what's happening here. Brian says, LOL. You better be laughing, Brian, because you're going to come in here. You're going to sub next week when I take vacation. I'm going to take a vacation next week. And you can do my Power God daily studies and my 2-hour radio show daily. And take care of your sugar glider. Oh, Brian, I don't know what I'm going to do with that guy either. See, Brian, he was awake yesterday about like Jill. I didn't hear boo from Brian yesterday. My 6-figure contract states no vacation? Oh, Brian says I can't get a vacation because it's not in my contract. I told Brian, I said, I got a 6-figure salary. The only problem is they're all zeros. I got a company car, too. Only it's a Hot Wheels car. I got a company car and a 6-figure salary. I don't even know if I can get the cookies that come along in the contract and the parking valet. Oh, sir, can we park your Hot Wheels car over here? Yes, you may. All right. Let's see what's happening in the world here. Still haven't got Jill woke up yet. Jill. Let's see. I just heard some kind of a notification. Maybe. Oh, that's on Facebook. Oh, Matt. Good morning, Matt. How you doing? I guess it's morning for Matt up in Alaska. It's like, let's see, 4 hours behind us. 3 or 4, something like that. So good morning, Matt. Let's see. What is, it's German. Guten Morgen. Let me see how you spell that. Guten Morgen. That's that is good morning in German. Guten, okay, where are we at? Guten Morgen. Copy. Guten Morgen. Yeah, that's right. Guten Morgen. Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to spell it. I took a little bit of German in high school. Herr Becher. Herr Becher, I think, had cancer, had a brain surgery or something, and he was really a Guten Tag is good day, yeah. So I took a little bit of German in high school, and Herr Bachelor. Guten Abend. Guten Abend is good afternoon, and I forget good night. Good night. Guten Morgen. Guten Abend. Guten. I can't remember that one. Anyway, Herr Becher was a really nice guy. We used to, I think the kids kind of used to make fun of him because he had on that toupee from Harry's House of Toupees, used toupees, and it looked like a rug on his head. Because I think he'd had a brain surgery. He was a really nice guy. We probably gave him more grief than we needed to. I had this friend, Danny, and he'd say, he'd raise his hand in class, Mr. Becher or whatever, and Becher, can't remember the exact name. And he would say, how do you spell that? And the teacher, he'd take the time to spell it out for him. And, of course, Danny was just pulling his leg, trying to eat up time in class so he didn't have to learn anything. Kind of sad I didn't hang in there. Of course, I went up to that high school for a girl, and it's a long story that I won't get into, but I end up getting on a bunch of campus-bound stuff because I was missing some classes, sleeping through classes. I lost my roommate. He had an alarm clock, didn't have an alarm clock. I was campus-bound, social-bound, ever bound you can be. And I'm laying about, 500 feet from the love of my life, and I might as well been 500 miles, so I figure I'm going to go home. And, of course, she got it in her head that I was leaving for another girl. And so she ended up getting interested, oddly enough, in one of my best friends. So, and they ended up married, and they're now divorced. But kind of bummed out I didn't hang in there and learn German. But any case, a Guten Morgen to Matt. It's actually afternoon here, but so, and of course, I tell you at the end of the night, and one of the cool things is, as I say, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors. Tune into this guy. Give him a shot, you know. And the verse, he don't care if you love him or hate him. You know, I've often say, you know, hey, what do you think of that Frank the Verse guy? Oh, man, I love that guy. Hey, what do you think of that Frank the Verse guy? Oh, man, I hate that guy. What do you think of Frank the Verse guy? And if somebody says, well, I can take him, I can leave him, I'm like, nah, I'm doing my job. I want to be that love me or hate me. So I'll tell people at the end of the show, I'll say, hey, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors, you know, there's this guy. Listen to him, give him a shot. Well, actually, Matt started listening through Jill. So Jill must have lit Matt up to Frank's World. Frank the Verse Thomas. Now, I don't know what Matt's opinion is yet, but glad to have Matt listening. And Matt resides in Alaska. And he said that's 3 hours. They're 3 hours behind us. So let's see. California would be 2 hours behind us. So he's 3 hours behind. I think he said Hawaii's 4. I think he said one time. All right. So let me close that. And let me get over here to my text messages. I still haven't got Jill awake yet. You know, she's bugging me the other day. She says, you know what I expect to hear this season? You know, ha, 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 Santa caught in the chimney. You know, she just loves that Santa getting caught in the chimney, but, you know, the kids are picking fun at him, and it's Dad. Dad's stuck in the chimney, and nobody cares. So she says, you know what I expect to hear in this season? I said, no, no, and no. Ho, ho, from a stuck Santa. She said, Scrooge. I said, ha, ha, ha. So he says, wake up, Jill, or Santa ain't going to visit your chimney and get stuck. Still haven't got a rise out of Jill yet. All right, so here is text message that came in. I've got a friend that I think gets a daily Bible text on his an app on his phone, and I think a pastor friend of his signed him up with the app or hooked him up with the app. Jill tagged me in a post. Is she playing piano again? She's on my last good nerve. Jill is on my last good nerve here. This is Jill. This makes Jill's day. I'm going to make Jill's day here.
There's something stuck up in the chimney and I don't know what it is, but it's been there all night long. Well, I waited up for Santa all Christmas night, but he never came, and it don't seem right that there's something in the chimney and it doesn't make a sound, but I wish you a Merry Christmas. There's something stuck up in the chimney and I don't know what it is, but it's been there all week long. Well, the dog keeps barking up the chimney flue, and we don't know what we're gonna do, 'cause there's something in the chimney and it doesn't move around, and it's been a week since Christmas. There's something stuck up in the chimney and I don't know what it is, but it's been there all month long. Well, it's jammed up tight above the fireplace. Now the house smells funny, such a big disgrace that there's something in the chimney and it doesn't talk.
Now I'm going to give you a hint. It's Dad. Dad's stuck in the chimney, and they're leaving him there. They don't even care. Hey, where's Dad at? You seen Dad lately? Oh, Dad, he's stuck in the chimney trying to be hero boy for Christmas and come down the chimney and ho, ho, ho. That Jill, she's something else. Brian says, oh, you spoiled the song. Okay, I'm going to finish this song once and for all, and this is the only time Jill's going to ever hear this. So there is another minute, let's see, about another 53 seconds left of this song.
Knock it off, and it's been there since last Christmas. There's something stuck up in the chimney, and I don't know what it is, but it's been there all year long. I'll be waiting up for Santa like I did last year, but my brother says he's already here. And he's stuck up in the chimney, and he doesn't say a word, and I'll be there every Christmas. And we'll have him every Christmas.
Oh, Jill, are you happy now? At least you could throw Dad a donut up the chimney. All right, what do we got here? It says, second favorite Christmas parody song, I Love Our Christmas, Ground Zero by Weird Al Yankovic, and the, oh yeah, Grandma got run over by the John Deere. Yeah, I know that one. That's Matt's two favorite songs. So Matt's got kind of a sense of humor like Jill. Gee, I wonder where he got that. He must have got that honestly. Come by that honest. So, yeah, that'll make her happy, Matt says. Okay, cookies and milk. All right. So let me get to the text message that came in earlier. And as I said, and Matt says Christmas at Ground Zero. And so my friend up in Virginia, he gets a Bible text on his app every day because I think a pastor's his got him hooked up on that, so I think he just forwards it to me. And usually I read them and comment on them. This is 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. So usually what I like to do is, okay, I already got my deal recorded, so I can close that. I got one, Power of God. So I'll look at 1 Peter 5. If my computer will hang in there. It always has the cursor, and then it ends up disappearing. So to put this verse in context, the elders which are among you, I exhort you, who am also an elder and witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. So this is Peter talking. Feed the flock of God which is among you. Okay, now, you remember Peter denied the Lord 3 times. Peter, before the cock crows 3 times, you're going to deny me. Or before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. That's actually what he was saying. And notice that number 3, there's something intriguing about that. Because you remember after Christ was risen, and he was about to ascend to heaven, and there was them 5, 6 occasions where Christ showed up and met with the disciples. And so Peter and Christ is walking along the beach, I suppose, the shore. Peter, do you love me? Well, yes, Lord, I love you. Feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? Well, yes, Lord, you know I love you. Well, feed my flock. And then a third time he hits on him. Peter, do you love me? Now, by this time, Peter's getting just a little bit anxious, agitated, irritated. I don't know what feelings he's going through, but he's like, probably wondering, what are you driving at, Lord? Yes, I love you. Feed my sheep. So Peter says, feed the flock of God which is among you, taking the oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind. So, in other words, don't have an ulterior motive at hand when you're helping the little old lady across the road because you think she may be rich and leave you in her will. Are you helping the little old lady across the road because you know she's struggling to get across? So Peter says, don't do anything for filthy lucre. Neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being examples to the flock. Lead by example. They say the Pope's is in the line of Peter, because Peter was the foundation block, the builder of the church. The Pope lives in such luxury. I watched a 4-hour deal on IPTV one night. I mean, this guy's got his own personal chef. He's got a guy that just lays out his clothes, cleans his clothes, sends this to the cleaner, that to the cleaner. I mean, this guy's got his private assistants. He's got all these various robes and head attires that he can wear. I mean, why don't you liquidate? If you're so worried about the poor, you'll hear the Pope constantly give some bleeding heart crocodile tears about the poor. Sell everything you have. Liquidate the Vatican. Liquidate the paintings, the sculptures, and the various things, and liquidate it and feed the poor. This guy sits in the lap of luxury and lectures us on the poor. So what Peter is saying, if the pontiffs are supposedly come in the lineage of Peter, the rock, God's going to build the church on the rock, neither as being lords over God's heritage. Some people, I was telling you that story yesterday about Joel Osteen drowning in his swimming pool, and I finally realized I was seeing it, and I didn't know what it was. So finally I see a Christian story, a real Christian story, but it's a parody of Joel Osteen dying under 9 feet of $50 bills in his swimming pool. Don't be lord over God's heritage, but be examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, ye shall receive a crown of glory that fades not away. But you see, here's the problem. More people are worried about winning the crown than shouldering the cross. You got to set aside your aspirations for the crown for a while, friend, until you carry that cross. And ye shall receive a crown of glory that fades not away. Likewise, you younger, submit yourself to the elder. Yea, all of you be subject one to another, and be clothed with humility, for God resisteth the proud, and giveth grace to the humble. Verse 6, humble yourself therefore unto the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. Then verse 7, this is the one that came in, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. You remember when Christ told Peter, Peter, oh God, far be it from me for this thing to happen to you. Christ revealed to the disciples that he was going to die. He was going to be crucified and die. And Peter immediately jumps in and says, far be it from me, Lord, to allow this thing to happen. Peter's ready to pick up the sword and fight. He's not going to allow his Lord to be killed. And Christ told him, Peter, Satan seeks to sift you as wheat. So now Peter is reminding his followers and his faithful, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil is a roaring lion, walking about seeking whom he may devour. Now wait a minute, I thought Satan was in hell. Now, eternal hell teaches you, see, I didn't mean to get on this, but this is, this is expanding on verse 7 here. But we're told that you go immediately to heaven or immediately to hell when you die. So maybe you got some guy, I don't know, some guy that done something and never accepted Jesus Christ, and he's been in hell for 5,000 years burning. And he only, I don't know, maybe he lived a couple hundred years and he done a little bit of evil, but he never accepted Christ as Savior, and he's in hell burning right now, and he's been burning for the last 5,000 years. But Peter tells us that Satan is walking around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So Satan ain't in hell yet. So you really would think it's fair that somebody is plunged immediately upon death into hell, and they're suffering and agonizing, and Satan's walking around scot-free? You see, if you really analyze it, the doctrine falls apart on its own weight. Whom resist steadfast in faith, knowing the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. But the God of all grace, who's called us into his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after that ye have suffered a while, make you perfect, establish and strengthen you, and settle you. To him be the glory and dominion forever and ever. By Silvanus, a faithful brother unto you, as I suppose, I have written briefly, exhorting and testifying that this is the true grace of God wherein ye stand. The church that is in Babylon, elected together with you, saluteth you, and so doth Marcus, my son. Greet one another with a kiss of charity. Peace be with you, all that are in Christ Jesus. Amen. So there's 14 verses in the chapter of 5. I just thought I would give you a little bit of context because, if you pick a verse out of the Bible, you can make it kind of sound, it's like they say you can torture a statistic to make it say anything you want. And in some ways, you can torture a Bible verse and make it say anything you want too. So what you do to put it in context is you get a few verses before it, a few verses after it, and you put it into context, and maybe you might even need to back up a chapter or two. But sometimes verses are kind of straightforward, and then other times they're not. But that's the text that came in today. All right, so, and you survived the night of IPTV. Yeah, Actually, I got my mom to sit through and watch it. There was two things I was surprised. Is my mom, she was one that couldn't sit too long because she had to go out and use the girls' room, let's say. But I actually got her to sit through this 4-hour marathon of, showing all the history and the goings-on of the Pope and how they vote for new popes and all this sort of stuff. And it was a really interesting program. Because it was back when Benedict was in charge. And Benedict had threatened to do an audit of the Bank of Rome or the Vatican Bank or whatever. Well, that's, of course, where the mob launders all their drug money. And so there was a direct warning put out in the newspaper by some Italian mob leaders that we're not beyond offing a pope. And then, of course, Benedict had that sex scandal that was about to explode on the scene. So Benedict got out. And if you ever think of this, there's not supposed to be a new pope until the old pope's dead. We have 2 living popes. How do you have 2 living vicars of Christ on earth? Actually, Francis, if you look at it, may be the false prophet because he's the false pope. And of course, we won't get into the Jesuit general, who is the real power behind the scene. He's the black pope, and I don't mean skin pigment. I mean the black clothing and the black beanie. That's the Jesuit general. That's the real teeth of the papacy. But Benedict got his keister out of there because I think Benedict didn't want to be offed. And you didn't hear no more audits of the Vatican Bank, and you didn't hear, and of course Benedict got out of there before the sex scandal hit the church, kind of left it in the lap of Francis. But the other show I was able to get my mother to sit through was another IPTV marathon, and that was a marathon on Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And it really burst the bubble of the so-called giant icon of the left because a couple of things. Number one, FDR didn't want to do anything about the racism that was going on in the South. But he basically got he got dragged kicking and screaming into World War II by Winston Churchill. It wasn't until Japan dropped the attack on us at Pearl Harbor that kind of incited Roosevelt to even get in. He just wanted to pacify Hitler. If we just, pat him on the back and isolate him, everything will be okay. Appease. If we appease him. That was the word I was trying to talk to my friend Chris today, and I couldn't remember the word. Appeasement. Neville Chamberlain. And those who wanted to appease Hitler. And of course, we got into that because the prosecutor of the Ghislaine Maxwell deal is James Comey's daughter, according to my friend Chris. And I was saying, well, John Kennedy, when he was president, wanted to separate himself from Joe, his dad, because Joe was one of these Neville Chambers. Neville Chambers. Neville Chamberlain, I think, was the guy's name. He was behind the movement that wanted to just basically appease Hitler. Like Hitler didn't have worldwide aspirations to conquer the world. Neville Chamberlain, yeah, that's the guy. And Joe Kennedy, the dad, was kind of in that appeasement camp. And so when John got into office, he wanted to kind of portray himself as I don't want to say a war hawk, but a hawk. A hawk on military, a hawk on defense. But one of the things that was brought up on the show is they always want to pat FDR on the back for, getting us out of the Great Depression, and that there's no such thing. And I'll give you the facts here. Going into World War II, nationwide unemployment was roughly 25%. So all of FDR's big programs, WPA and all his big programs to save the economy, brought unemployment down to roughly 14%. So he and all his big government programs brought unemployment down 11%. And then leading into World War II, unemployment spiked back up to 17-18%. Then going into World War II, unemployment went down to 2%, which is basically full employment. So if you want to know the truth of the matter, FDR did not bring us out of the Great Depression. World War II brought us out of the Great Depression because, as Newt Gingrich rightfully says, we were going into World War II using World War I armament. And Matt says FDR is an outright fraud. Well, I can't say I disagree with you, Matt. So, as Newt Gingrich says, going into World War II, we were still fighting with World War I armament, planes and munitions and stuff like that. And when the country went to work, within 2.5 years of the beginning of World War II, we were out manufacturing Japan, Germany, and Italy combined. Well, it probably didn't hurt that we had bombed, we was bombing Germany back to the Stone Age, and we ended up dropping the atomic and the hydrogen bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So from 1945 from 1945 to 1975, we led the world in manufacturing. During World War II, we consumed 96% of what we manufactured. We were only importing 4% of our goods. And everything that we've done in this country since 1945 to 1975, everything we've done in this country in that 30 years post World War II shot our manufacturing base in the foot to literally where we had no manufacturing. It's basically flip-flopped. We're importing about 90% of our needs and manufacturing about 4%. We have the profile of colonial, a trade portfolio of, China. They build all the high-tech stuff, and we're dealing in soybeans and beans and trinkets and beads, stuff like that. They're making our tennis shoes, they're making our cameras, they're making our smartphones, they're making our TVs. They're making everything. But I got my mom to sit down and watch a 4-hour thing on FDR. And that was amazing too. I think, it might have been a Ken Burns special. I can't remember. But she watched a 4-hour FDR and a 4-hour deal on the Pope. But if you want to historically know the facts, FDR didn't do anything, and all his big government programs didn't do anything to lead us out of the Great Depression. It was World War II that thinned the herd, and when the boys come back from war, they was making babies right and left because there was 50 million babies born after World War II, and babies needed diapers, and diapers needed washing machines, and washing machines, as the old Maytag repairman says, it's the loneliest job in the planet because they don't need no repair, but, washing machines needed repair. These suburbs started expanding and houses started being built. They had the babies, they had the diapers, they had the washing machines, and, we dominated the world from 45 to 75, and everything we've done in this country since 1975 is shot ourselves in the foot on manufacturing. So, now that I got that out of my system, you want to take care of the poor, Mr. Pontiff, liquidate most of the Vatican and feed the poor, feed my sheep. But that's what Peter is saying, is don't lord over. Be an example, lead by example. All right, so got that. Let me see, I got a deal here. All right, so let's get, I need to get rolling here today, and I need to get my Power of God daily study played. And that is the 3rd of December. Further thought, I actually recorded this on October the 25th. So this is Further Thought. And actually, there's a title behind it. It's Further Thought, Remember, Do Not Forget. Remember, do not forget. I'm guessing this will probably involve the Sabbath. You know, the Sabbath is the one thing that God tells us to remember, and the rest of the Protestant world seems to want to forget. Here we go. This is play.
And now it's time for the Power of God Daily Studies, originating from KPOG, your sister station in Central Iowa. Let us come together and rightly divide the Word of God in today's Power of God Daily Studies, an in-depth study of God's Word, presented by Frank Thomas.
Good day. It is Frank Thomas with our Power of God Daily Studies for Friday, December the 3rd. Further thought. How great the condescension of God and his compassion for his erring creatures in thus placing the beautiful rainbow in the clouds as a token of his covenant with men. The Lord declares that when he looks upon the bow, he will remember his covenant. This does not imply that he would ever forget, but he speaks to us in our own language, that we may better understand him. It was God's purpose that as the children after the generations should ask the meaning of the glorious ark which spans the heavens, their parents should repeat the story of the flood and tell them the Most High had bended the bow and placed it in the clouds as an assurance that the waters should never again overflow the earth. Thus, from generation to generation, it would testify of divine love to man and would strengthen his confidence in God. Ellen White, Patriarchs and Prophets, page 106 and 107. Since the founding of Christianity, there has never been a church that has partaken of the wealth and creature comforts that the church in some countries of the world enjoys today. The question is, at what cost? Such affluence surely influences our spirituality, and not for the good either. How could it be? Since we have wealth and material abundance fostered the Christian virtues of self-denial and self-sacrifice. In most cases, the opposite occurs. The more people have, the more self-sufficient they become, and the less they tend to depend on God. Wealth and prosperity, however nice, do come with many dangerous spiritual traps. You know, there's an old saying, the more you make, the more you'll spend. So it's a never-ending trap. For most people, wealth is a detriment. People don't know what to do with all their success. It's like the guy in the Bible who all he could figure out to do with all his prosperity was tear down his barns and build bigger ones to house all his plenty. No thought to giving some to the less fortunate. And God said, "Thou fool, Your life shall be required of thee this night. Wealth is not intrinsically evil, as some people would like to promote. Wealth is both a blessing and a curse. A blessing when it is used in the kingdom building of God. A curse when it is used in self-gratification. Discussion questions for the week, and there are 3. Question 1. Discuss the question of how wealth can be very relative. That is, someone not deemed wealthy in his country might be super rich in another one. And how it impacts our spirituality. Well, for one, can you be rich in health? Can you be rich in wisdom? Can you be abundant in other blessings besides monetary blessings? Do you have an intact family? Family members that's not in prison, in jail, dead, in addiction clinics? I would consider that wealthy. What are ways that those with money can protect themselves from the dangers that wealth can create? Well, invest it in God's kingdom. If you hoard your money for yourself, for self-gratification, self-pleasing, your money becomes a curse. You know, a gun is not intrinsically evil. It's what it's used for. A knife is not intrinsically evil. It's what it's being used for. You remember when you were a young man, you had those Instamatic cameras come out in the 60s. Developed the picture before your very eyes. Well, that was great for taking pictures of the family, but how long did it take for some other nefarious pictures to be taken also? You know, those ones you didn't have to send to have developed. So it's all about what you do with what you have, whether it's a curse or a blessing to you. Question 2. In class, well, since you're class, I'm going to be talking to you. In class, talk about the closing scenes in Christ's life and what they tell us about God's love for us and why we must never forget the reality of that love. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth should not perish but have everlasting life. You think God was envied taking that walk to the cross? Do you think that he liked being squeezed like the olive presses in Gethsemane 3 times? You know, he went out and he asked his disciples to pray for him, to hold him up in their prayers. And he went out and he woke him up once and he woke him up twice, and the 3rd time he just said, let him sleep. And each and every time he was being squeezed, a little more additional weight was being applied. And there was something going on simultaneously. Simultaneously, the full weight of sin was pressing down on him. And at the same time, he was being slowly separated from the Father until he perspired blood droplets out of his forehead. What other things can you think of that reveal the goodness of God and why we should always keep this reality in mind? Well, his watchful care, his patience, his long-suffering, his gentleness, the way he treats us. When he finds us in a pit, he doesn't chastise us and crack the whip on us and tell us how stupid we are for falling in that pit. He gently lifts us up, holds us to his bosom, and carries us back and nurses us back to health. Now, later on down the road, there'll be some opportunity for lesson learning, some discipline. But when he finds you in the pit, he treats you just like you would go treat your lost child in the same pit. Tenderly, you'd dig him out. Question 3. Though some scientists say there was no worldwide flood, despite the Bible saying there was, and the rainbow, some say there was no six-day creation either, despite the Bible saying that there was, and the seventh-day Sabbath to memorialize it. What should this tell us about how powerful and negative the impact of culture can be on faith? Well, I've told you this before. Neil deGrasse High, emphasis high, those are my words, Tyson, he's a Harvard astrophysicist. He said on Bill Moyer's show one night that anyone who is a young earther shouldn't be allowed to vote. Well, that makes us exactly even, Neil, because I think anyone who is a old earther shouldn't be allowed to vote. You see, this is where some Christians get shy. They get embarrassed and they get hesitant because, well, I might go up against an astrophysicist. So what? Neil doesn't have the answers for everything. In the same show on Bill Moyer, he acknowledged that he couldn't tell you whether there was black matter or not. And he couldn't tell you whether black holes and time travel was a reality or not, because they can't produce it in the laboratory. So it's a theory. They speculate. And they speculate on a lot. So what I say is when your C-carbon-14 dating methods conflict with the Word of God, it's not the Word of God that's wrong. Comprende? But people don't want to stick out like a sore thumb because, well, science says, like science is somehow bigger and better than God. I told you about my friend Christian, the atheist, conceding to me once. I said, Christian, if God is God, if God is who truly the Bible says he is, and what people say he is, the attributes that are accorded to God, if those are true, would you concede that this God would have to be both the creator of math and science? My friend Christian says yes, if those attributes are true. So if God's word and science conflict, what's wrong in the equation? It's not God's word. It's man's science. But this is where we get these weak-kneed, spineless Christians who want to give lip service to something called intelligent design. There's no compromise. No compromise. There is no compromise between evolution and creation. And to try to make a square peg fit in a round hole doesn't work. But this is why Christians are so hesitant to stand up for their conviction. Because if there is no 6-day creation week, there's no Sabbath. And who do you think that would be in the interest of? Can you say the Prince of Darkness? Beelzebub? Satan? There's been an attack on everything God is and everything God has created from the time war broke out in heaven. So this is Frank Thomas with our Power of God Daily Studies for today. If you would like to email the show, send us a comment, a question, a criticism, drop us a line and let us know you're listening, kpogradio@gmail.com. And join us here tomorrow, Sabbath, December the 4th.
Thank you, Frank. And thanks for joining us today for the Power of God Daily Study. We pray that this study enriches your day and draws you closer to our Savior. Join us each and every day for the Power of God Daily Study.
All right, so it's just now coming on 5 o'clock, so we'll go to our SRN News. This is Frank the Verse Thomas here at
KPOG 102.9 FM, Grimes.
With SRN News, I'm Jason Walker. An attorney says two parents charged with involuntary manslaughter in a Michigan high school shooting this week left town earlier for their own safety, but they are returning now to face arraignment. Jennifer and James Crumbley, the parents of Ethan Crumbley. America's employers have slowed the pace of hiring in November, but still adding 210,000 jobs. It is the fewest in nearly a year. Wells Fargo senior economist Sarah House says there is some good news, though.
We saw a lot more people come back into the labor force looking for work, and the total number of people reporting that they had a job over the past month rose by 1.1 million. So that suggests that we are seeing workers come back into the labor market, and that should make it easier for employers to hire in the months to come.
President Biden has signed into law the stopgap spending bill. It will keep the federal government running through the 18th of February. Also at srnnews.com, correspondent Charles De Ledesma reports tensions between Russia and the West escalating in recent weeks. Nations increasingly concerned about Moscow's military intentions.
Ukraine's defense minister has told lawmakers the number of Russian troops near Ukraine and in Russian-annexed Crimea is estimated at 94,300, warning that a large-scale escalation is possible in January. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has demanded Russia pulls back troops from the border with Ukraine.
Officials say diplomats negotiating in Vienna to revive Iran's 2015 nuclear deal with world powers, pausing after 5 days of talks. They plan to consult with their own governments and then will reconvene next week. The Taliban have decreed the banning of forced marriage of women throughout Afghanistan. This is SRN News. Yet another warning about Netflix.
Don't let your kids watch Big Mouth, even though it's a cartoon about kids. That's the word from the Parents Television and Media Council, which has been issuing warnings about Netflix shows for some time now. The streaming giant is a major offender, but it's an industry-wide problem. The PTC says, quote, "We have observed and documented a trend in TV programming whereby children or child-aged characters are increasingly involved in scenes that are sexually explicit." Michael Harrington, SRN News.
The Los Angeles branch of Planned Parenthood admits it was hit by a data breach involving some 400,000 patients. A hacker apparently installed computer malware, they think, in October and stole files containing patient names and possibly addresses, insurance, and medical information. This is SRN News.
Wall Street closed out a bumpy week with more losses following a mixed reading on U.S. jobs. Markets that investors said was tough to parse. The S&P 500 gave up an early gain and closed 0.8% lower. The benchmark index is coming off a jolting stretch where it swerved by at least 1.2% in 5 straight days, pounded by uncertainty about how the newest coronavirus variant and about when the Federal Reserve will halt its support for markets. The Dow was down 59 points to 34,580. The Nasdaq dropped 295 to 15,085. The S&P 500 lost 38 points to 4,538. New York oil fell 24 cents to $66.26 a barrel. With business, I'm John Scott.
And you'll find more details at srnnews.com.
Sitting in a garage doesn't make you a car, and just sitting in church doesn't make you a Christian. It's all about relationship with the one who saves. KPOG at FM 102.9 and streaming live on the web at kpog.org. KPOG, the power of God. To join the conversation, call 515-442-KPOG. It's your voice we want to hear. Now, back to the show with your host, Frank the Verse Thomas.
Come on, y'all.
All right, we're back. We are here with our daily view from the pew. Matt, he sent me a story, says the exaggerator in chief, Joe Biden, claims he was liaison for Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir during a 6-day war, and it's not true. President Joe Schmo, exaggerator of the truth, Biden said during a White House Hanukkah celebration on Wednesday that he met with former Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir during the 6-day war in 1967, but he was still in law school at the time and former PM had not yet been elected. Well, you know, corn pop, you know, they soaked their razors in the... He said, hey, Esther Williams... can't use that pomade or whatever was in his hair to get in the swimming pool. So Corn Pop was going to meet him after the end of the night. Somebody told him, well, take this length of chain. And he went out to face down Corn Pop. And he tells how Corn Pop, they soak their razors in water so they'd be rusty and cut you with rusty razors. And so Joe went out with this piece of chain and faced down Corn Pop. I'd like to meet Corn Pop. I'd like to hear Corn Pop's side of this story. But Joe basically apologized. Well, you know, I just, you know, don't mean to think he apologized for the Esther Williams remark. But Joe's been known a few times to exaggerate the truth. I have known every prime minister, well, since Golda Meir, including Golda Meir, Joe said during remarks at a menorah lighting ceremony. And during the 6-day war, I had opportunity to, she invited me to come over because I was going to be the liaison between she and the Egyptians about the Suez and so on and so forth. As I sat in front of her desk, Chuck, and she had a guy, her staff member, to my right. His name was Rabin. Biden continues, and she kept flipping those maps up and down. She had a bevy of maps, sort of kept it, and it was so depressing what she was about what happened, gave me every detail. Does that sound like the discombobulated talk of Joe? President Biden did meet with Meir, but the meeting happened in 1973, 6 years after the 6-day war. It's a meeting Biden often references as Israel-related events, as he said it was one of the most consequential meetings I've ever had in my life. See, that's Joe's problem, and he conflates stories. He's got somebody was giving somebody a Medal of Honor, and somebody didn't want the medal and throwed it down, and he conflates these stories where he's always the hero. He's always the knight in shining armor. classified Israeli memo reportedly unearthed last year gives more insight into what Biden and Meyer discussed. The memo made by an unnamed senior Israeli official who attended the meeting claims Biden and Meyer discussed Israel's security challenges during and after the Six-Day War. Biden warned Israel's actions in its territories it claimed during the Six-Day War, including the West Bank, Biblical Judea and Samaria, the Golan Heights, and West Bank amounted to creeping annexation, according to, well, I guess it's their right if he wants. You know, if you're going to prop up Israel, if the United States and Britain is going to prop up Israel, then let Israel do what they want with their own country. If you still believe it's promised land, then there's no two-state solution. I don't believe that literal Israel has anything to do with Bible prophecy. I believe we are all Israel, Jew, Greek, Gentile, circumcised, uncircumcised. We are all part of what we call spiritual Israel, not literal Israel. And when the Bible talks about Jerusalem in the Bible, it's the new Jerusalem that is in heaven and will come down inside the city, and the throne of David will be inside the new Jerusalem. So I don't think that literal Israel has anything to do with end-day events. But if you're going to prop up Israel, then let Israel defend itself and quit trying to equivocate self-defense and terrorism of Hamas and Hezbollah. He argued that since Israel has military superiority, it would take the first steps towards lowering tensions by withdrawing from territories which have no strategic importance. The Israeli officials claim Biden said the Nixon administration is being dragged by Israel into the conflict. Meyer rejected Biden's suggestion of taking unilateral steps and lectured the young senator on the region, showing him maps and explaining Israel's security challenges. She later asked Biden to pose for a photograph. Pardon me. The memo said Biden was very respectable and repeatedly said that he was there to learn. And yet, while speaking, displayed a fervor and made comments that signaled his lack of diplomatic experience. Well, nothing's changed since then. All right, so I got a few stories here that I want to share with you. Some of them might just be a headline. Some of them I might talk a little bit more about. CDC reports uptick in kids diagnosed with autism. 2018 data suggests 1 in 44 kids in the U.S. have the condition. In 2016, it was 1 in 54. So in 2 more years, is it going to be 1 in 34? You know, so that's 2018. So what's the 220 data? 1 in 34? That stat is going the wrong direction. New autism numbers released Thursday suggest more U.S. children are being diagnosed with the developmental condition at younger ages. Let's see. Autism rates varied widely. 1 in 26 in California. Wow. 1 out of every 26 kids in California is diagnosed with autism, where services are plentiful. 1 to 60 in Missouri. So that's certainly a better number than California. Overall, autism prevalence was similar across racial and ethnic lines, but rates were higher among black children in 2 sites, Maryland and Minnesota. Until recently, U.S. data showed prevalence among white children was higher. Well, certainly that's not good news. Now, I'm going to share with you just a couple of NFL stories just because they caught my eye. Here's Aaron Rodgers flaunts the NFL virus protocols and gets a fine barely that shows up on his paycheck. Antonio Brown and 2 others do the same and get 3-game suspensions. Well, I can tell you why. They don't like Antonio Brown, for one. But apparently Tampa Bay got 3 players suspended for 3 games. All right. Pipeline, cascade of white owners has slowed NFL change. Over the past 100 years, about 110 people have owned controlling portions of NFL teams. Of that select group, all but 2 have been white. Well, maybe that's because they got a lot of money. The basic head count might offer the simplest explanation for how, even with the rules in place for nearly 2 decades that are designed to improve diversity, the league has struggled to build a pipeline for bringing blacks and other minorities into coaching and front office positions. Well, there's more blacks and coaches and minorities in positions and women. I mean, a couple years ago, well, it may still be true, the San Francisco 49ers in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago against the Chiefs had a female trainer. So, I don't know. Are we going to worship at the altar of diversity? In 2021, the process produced these statistics. Black players make up about 70% of the team rosters. But blacks are only 13% of the nation demographically. So, do we need to rectify that number also? Well, okay. 57% of blacks has got to stop playing because that's not reflecting the number. Okay, I don't think that's going to happen. We just need to quit worrying about who's owning the NFL football teams and be more like Donald Trump. A rising tide lifts all boats. You know, everybody, well, what are you going to do about jobs? You know, somebody was asking Mitt Romney during the 2012 campaign, well, what are you going to do about jobs for women? Well, how about jobs for everybody? Wouldn't it be better just to say, what are you going to do about jobs? But everybody's a special interest. What are you going to do about jobs for Hispanics? What are you going to do about jobs for women? What are you going to do about jobs for blacks? What are you going to do about jobs for teenagers? How about just, what are you going to do about jobs? How about the government getting out of the way of innovation, research and development, and entrepreneurs, and just let the market create the jobs and let the government butt out of it? Oh, well, that's just a novel idea on my part. Epstein employee testifies about what he saw. Juan Alisi recalls Ghislaine Maxwell's meeting with Victoria Geifer. The house manager of Jeff Epstein's Palm Beach estate testified Thursday that he saw many females pass through during his tenure from 91 to 2002, including at least 2 who looked to be 14 or 15. The accusers, known as Jane and Virginia, who claims Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell coerced her into sexual acts with Prince Andrew. Guyfrey previously said Maxwell approached her at Mar-a-Lago when the then 15-year-old was working as a locker room attendant. Juan Alisi seemed to back that up, testifying that he was driving Maxwell around Mar-a-Lago when she got out to speak to a blonde girl in a white uniform that he later learned was Guyfrey. Let me see if how to pronounce will give me pronunciation on that. You know, I don't even really care to use a last name per se, but
Jufrey.
Jufrey. All right, well, Guy-free, Jufrey. Jufrey.
Jufrey.
All right. So where am I back? Okay, Jufrey. She turned up at Epstein's estate to meet with Maxwell later that afternoon. So, speaking on the fourth day of Maxwell's child trafficking trial in Manhattan, the 71-year-old Elise said the accused took over as the lady of the house, her term on the first day of her arrival in 1991. So I don't know. It just depends on how much, you know, are they going to throw Ghislaine Maxwell under the bus? Or is she going to sing like a canary on all the people that she knows, her little black book, so to speak? Because this is kind of an eyes wide shut. If you ever saw the Nicole Kidman, Tom Cruise movie, Eyes Wide Shut, this is kind of an eyes wide shut thing. The way they buy people's silence is everybody knows the dirty little filthy secrets on everybody else, and that kind of buys everybody silence. Well, now that they've caught Ghislaine Maxwell, are they going to go after anybody else? So where I got in this conversation with my friend Chris today, I was, you know, he said, well, look, he said, it doesn't smell good to me. He said, you got a Biden-appointed judge, and you got a James Comey's daughter is the prosecutor. And I said, well, you know, maybe she wants to be her own woman and doesn't want to stand in the shadow of her dad, James Comey. We know James Comey was a filthy cop. There's no question about that. Even though he called himself he was the self-appointed last good man standing. But, you know, be that may. Will the daughter want to walk in his shadow, or will she want to stand up and be her own woman? And that's what I was using the analogy of John Kennedy and his dad, that Joe Kennedy was an appeaser, much like Neville Chamberlain, and John wanted to distance himself from his dad and kind of be a defense hawk. So I don't know. I can't believe they don't want to fry some bigger fish, but that's just me. Major League Baseball lockout triggers Twitter rebellion among players. Because league can't use their likeness during lockout, they're having some fun online. Head to MajorLeagueBaseball.com and you'll spot a holiday gift guide, a story on the best baseball road trips in the 50 states, and a letter to fans from Commissioner Robert D. Manfred Jr. on how disappointed he is that the league was forced to commence a lockout. What you won't see on the league site are any stories or pictures of active players or likenesses of players that can't be used in any way without working out a collective bargaining agreement. I don't know. I was just telling you this story about Max Scherzer. New York Mets went out and signed this guy, Max Scherzer. He was a pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they signed this guy to a 3-year contract at $130 million. That's roughly $43 million a year, and I had to Google it to find out, but that roughly works out to $13,000 every time Max Scherzer throws a baseball. This can't be sustained. And so most likely Major League Baseball and their collective bargaining is trying to get into I'm going to comment on that. Usually the sports stories don't give you a comment. All right. Actually, let me just do that right now. Yeah, Donald Trump did want to own an NFL team back in the 80s. I think also, of course, Vince McMahon's tried a couple of times to. I'm gonna copy and paste this on this Major League Baseball story. Pastamundo. They said Major League Baseball pitcher Max Scherzer will make $43 million a year for 3 years for the Mets. Google says that equals $13,000 every time he throws a baseball. You wonder why they're in collective bargaining? Texas begins restricting abortion pills. Abortion providers blocked from supplying pills to women after 7 weeks of pregnancy. So 7 weeks, what's that? That's almost 2 months. Not quite 2 months. Texas is again limiting abortion access with a new law restricting access to abortion pills, the most common abortion method in Texas, per the Texas Tribune. SB 4, which took effect Thursday after passing the state Senate in September, prohibits abortion providers from supplying abortion-inducing medication to a patient after 49 days or 7 weeks of pregnancy. According to the FDA, Mifeprex and misoprostol can be taken up to 48 hours apart to terminate pregnancy up to 70 days after a woman's last period, or about 10 weeks of pregnancy. I don't know. As I said yesterday, there's consequences and there's responsibilities to sex. And I guess if you want to have something in this country where we eliminate responsibility and consequences to promiscuity, let's start aborting 3-year-olds. Why stop it just in the womb? I mean, kids are such a drag, man. Come on, man. Kids are a drag. So let's start aborting our 3-year-olds. I don't know. Where's it end? Life is either life or it's not. Life is either precious from conception to the grave or it's not. Ariel Maynor arrested in Jacqueline Avant murder. The 29-year-old is accused of breaking in and fatally shooting the beloved philanthropist. A suspect has been arrested. I reported on this story because Oprah was saying that the world's upside down. And I said, oh, really? You're just now figuring the world's upside down? It's funny you didn't mention the world was upside down during Black Lives Matter, burning down and rioting and looting of half of the American cities in the country. Hitting just a wee bit too close to Oprah home, I would say. But legendary music producer Clarence Avant, so this is his wife, in her Beverly Hills home on Wednesday. Ariel Maynor, 29, allegedly shot himself in the foot during an attempted burglary at a different home in the area. Hours after Avant was killed, police responded to the scene and found him there. and then connected him to the break-in at Avant's home. He is accused of entering the home and shooting Avant 81 with an AR-15 rifle. Why would you be carrying a rifle? Why wouldn't you be carrying a handgun? The LA Times reports no motive has yet been revealed. Police says it does not appear anything was taken from Avant's home, but they're still investigating. So maybe it was a murder for hire. Maybe Clarence wanted to get rid of his wife. I don't know. Maybe he's got a younger woman. I don't know. Who knows? This could be anything. Police say both surveillance video and the rifle link Maynor, who has, quote, extensive. Let me see if I can find a Google image of Ariel Maynor. Search image. If there's a mug shot, well, he's a black gentleman. He's got some artwork in his grill, and looks like he's got some, I don't know, the old tear tattoo. I don't know, the B in the middle of the forehead. That kind of looks like a Boston Red Sox tattoo. He's got a 2 under his left eye and a 6 or a tear or something under his right eye. So don't know what that's all about. Maybe he's an aspiring rap artist that got turned down by Clarence Avant. Maybe he's out looking for a pound of revenge. Who knows? Who knows what it is? Could be anybody's guess. Nothing was taken from the home. Our focus now is transitioned from finding a suspect to continuing the investigation that will lead to a successful prosecution. Let justice be served. Yeah, see, because now they're shooting people in Beverly Hills. See, it's okay if they break into your house over in Schlubville. But if they dare break into a Beverly Hills home, well, now we need justice. The Avant's daughter, Nicole, is married to Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos. Okay, so there you are. You're gonna get some justice when you start preying on the rich and the elite. I just like saying this name because it's really goofy. Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg and Kamala. Kamala and Buttigieg traveled to North Carolina to talk up the administration's infrastructure plans. However, the trip isn't focusing on roads and bridges, but on the political machinations at play. The elephant in the room, Noah Berman at the LA Times lays things out. Here's the theory. The pair of bold names in the Biden administration are vying to be next in line for the party's nomination in 2024 should Biden, the oldest president in U.S. history at 79, step aside, or in 2028 if he runs again. For the record, Berman, I'm gonna make a prediction that Biden won't even be cognitive in 2028 because he's barely cognitive now. For the record, Byerman, maybe, begins his analysis by quoting Democrat strategist Donna Brazile, calling the idea of a political rivalry between the pair as manufactured nonsense. All right, so there you are. But I'm interested to find out what all these tats on this guy's face is all about. If I had to guess, he's some kind of a aspiring rapper. And who knows? Not a bad-looking woman for 81, if that's a current picture. All right. Let's get some Christian news. Actually, Gomer. Remember Lou Ann Poovey on Gomer Pyle? Actually, Gomer. Lou Ann Poovey. I didn't know. Of course, I wasn't a big Gunsmoke fan in the day, but Lou Ann Poovey was April, a girlfriend of Festus on Gunsmoke. Let me sign in here. Let me see. I'll try signing in again. You know, I got to, every once in a while, I should be able to clean these out in one shot. Hopefully, select all. Let me excuse that one. That's my Wells Fargo bank statement. And I will delete some emails. All right. Take me to junk folder. I don't know why I'm getting junk folder. I'm getting a lot of junk in this folder of late. I don't know why. I promise here I'm going to get to a Christian news story here in a second as soon as I empty the trash. Okay, Mundo. All right, let me sign out of this. Sign out now. All right, let's see what's going on in the Christian world. The Chosen Christmas film smashes all-time Fathom record with $8 million in ticket sales. There's just some headlines I'm looking at. 45% of Americans say they're suffering hardship due to inflation. How should Christians respond to the abortion debate? Well, I'll just tell you how I stand. Okay? If we want to argue it's a necessary evil, I believe there should be a compromise in this situation. We've busted our butts to make it safe, legal, and rare. But I would say unless the life of the mother's on the line, there should be no reason for abortion for any other reason. Rape, incest, adopt. The only thing I think is life of the mother. But I'm not going to go chain myself to the entrance of an abortion clinic to stop some woman from doing something that I deem stupid. So that's how I, as a Christian, I stand for life. You may be aborting the next Jonas Salk, the next Albert Einstein, the next Madame Curie. Oh, and you might be aborting the next Hitler, but that's part of life. Sometimes you get some Einsteins, sometimes you get some Hitlers. But God has the keys to life and death, not you or me. And there was a woman who actually went into a court of law one time and argued that she wanted abortion because she wouldn't look good in her bikini this summer. In the summer. So that's my opinion. I would like to see Roe v. Wade overturned and it turned back to the states. So if New York wants to abort all their kids, party hardy. If Wyoming, who has a population of about, 600,000 people, maybe I'm a little behind the times, but they used to have a population around 600,000. Or maybe that was Montana. Montana had a population of about 600,000. Maybe they'd like to have some kids up in their state. Maybe they don't want to go around aborting their tax base. Well, if Montana wants to make abortion illegal, well, then Montana needs to make abortion illegal. If New York wants to make it legal, then let New York. You remember the movie Escape from New York and Snake Plissken? All right. What the justices said during Dobbs' arguments that have some pro-life legal experts optimistic. So some, I'm just going to tell you right here and right now, and I've told you this before, John Roberts has no interest in overturning Roe v. Wade. Now, I don't know if there will be a 5-4 decision or a 6-3 decision, but if it's left up to John Roberts is not going to overturn Roe v. Wade, in my opinion. Now, I could be wrong. While most Americans celebrate Christmas, only 22% can retell the biblical Christmas story, survey finds. Well, one thing, Christ wasn't born on Christmas. I think that's a pretty well-known debate. Okay, here's a German study. Oh boy, I'd get in a world of trouble for reporting this one. I'm going to share this with my friend Bob. Where are you at, Robert? Where is Roberto? There's Roberto. There's old Roberto. Let's see what else is happening here. Any other stories of interest? California town becomes constitutional republic because they don't want mandates. EU planned to ban Christmas language. They just backed down after huge backlash. Matt Walsh releases a children's book explaining the absurdity of transgenderism. This ought to be a good one. Well, here's another one. Defense of infanticide is disqualifying. Marco Rubio blocks Biden nominee who defended extreme partial birth abortion. Well, I think anybody ought to be blocked. Matt Walsh says, Johnny's a little boy with a big imagination. One day he pretends to be a big, scary dinosaur. The next day he's a knight in shining armor or a playful puppy. But when the internet people find out Johnny likes to make believe, he's forced to make a decision between the little boy he is and the things he pretends to be, and he's not allowed to change his mind, says Matt Walsh. Johnny the Walrus, available for purchase, is the first children's book by Walsh, a prolific critic of feminism, abortion, and transgenderism. Walsh, well known for his snarky activism, such as briefly claiming Virginia residency so he could speak at a Loudoun County school board meeting dressed up in a cardigan for Tuesday night interview with Tucker Carlson. This is Johnny the Walrus. I've embraced my true calling as a child's author, hence the cardigan, Walsh told Tucker Carlson. It's all about a child who has a very vivid imagination, and he pretends to be different things, such as a walrus. But he says Johnny's progressive mother is very confused and tries to raise her child as a walrus and as a sort of trans walrus, respecting his self-identity. Oh, that's going to be a good one. The book includes considering medical transition into a walrus for young Johnny. The story will also inform parents about the dangers of affirming a child's identity, Walsh said. Throughout the story, she does eventually start to learn that just because your child is pretending to be something doesn't mean that they actually are. You might draw other comparisons, Walsh said snarkily, like maybe if a young boy says he's a girl doesn't mean he's actually a girl. Hey, that's some novel thinking. Biology is not malleable. It's an objective reality. It can lead to terrible things when people affirm someone's made-up identity. The book is already sold out, and new copies won't go out until 2022. The conservative commentators said the success of the book shows that many people are tired of LGBT propaganda. Well, throw me in with that. There's dozens of children's books brainwashing kids into gender identity cult where they're taught that identity is malleable and biology is meaningless. The book is meant to be an antidote to all that madness. Though he posited there could be another motivation behind the success of the book. Perhaps, I've got a cough here. Perhaps that there is mostly untapped interest in walruses. That's kind of a cute story. "10 minutes to the..." Okay, I don't even know if this is a true story or not, but it said, because I read another story like this today. Exposed Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church has thousands and thousands of dollars hidden in the walls. Is this another parody? Says Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church in Houston became the fortunate recipient of a financial surprise when a plumber made a shocking discovery when fixing a toilet wall at the church late last month. The plumber discovered thousands of envelopes stuffed full of cash and checks 7 years after the church had reported nearly $600,000 stolen from its coffers. The plumber, known only as Justin, made the discovery public on his radio show this week. "There was a loose toilet in the wall, and we removed the tile," Justin told Morning Bullpen show George Lindsay. "We went to remove the toilet. I removed some insulation away from, and about 500 envelopes fell out of the wall, and it was like, oh, wow." In a statement, Lakewood Church confirmed the discovery of an undisclosed amount of cash, said the Houston Police Department had been notified. In 2014, the church had reported $200,000 in cash and $400,000 in checks, along with written credit card information stolen. Victor Sentes, a spokesman for the Houston police, said it was not an electronic breach, but Lakewood said the funds were fully insured, and Osteen had encouraged those who made contributions to the church to monitor their bank accounts and credit card statements. Well, apparently it's a true story. But I was reading something else that said something about a church or thousands of dollars hidden in the walls, but it didn't mention Joel Osteen's church. The latest example of transanity is nothing to cheer about. Once and again, it's women who's being hurt in the process. Oh, this is Michael Brown. He's usually pretty long-winded. In the latest example of transanity, a biological male swimmer is smashing women's swimming records at the University of Pennsylvania, and this is supposed to be a cause for rejoicing, yet another example of inclusion intolerance. To the contrary, it's the latest example of a society that's lost touch with reality, and once again, it's the women who are being hurt in the process. The case at hand involves Will Leah Thomas, who previously competed as a man at the same university prior to the lockdown. At that time, according to the Washington Examiner, Thomas was a second-team All-Ivy swimmer in 3 different events. Now he's smashing Ivy League women's records. So obviously, women aren't as prolific swimmers as men. So far from being a second-team male swimmer, he's not even on the first team. He's now become the female champion, smashing the ladies' hard-earned records. But of course, there's no difference between male to female transgender and biological female, not at all. Thomas has no unfair advantage, and the emperor has no clothes. And I have a bridge in Brooklyn to sell, and I have some oceanfront property on the western half of Iowa for sale. Let's see. UPS lays off hundreds of workers in Biden's hometown of Scranton, says Matt. Well, maybe I'll pick up on that story on Monday. So, really, now, have we totally lost our minds? I actually wrote the words, "The emperor has no clothes," before reading the next paragraph in the Examiner. We've already seen a man well past his physical prime taking a spot at the Olympics away from a 21-year-old female athlete. Now a man who was winning against men just 2 years ago and is dominating women's swimming in the Ivy League, all because sports leagues and organizations are rejecting basic biology in favor of scientifically illiterate gender ideology. And it's only going to get worse, as the Olympics have now signaled their support for more men to compete in women's events. Well, hopefully, the United States will grow some testicular fortitude and boycott China's Olympics until China maybe starts treating Christians and Uyghurs a little bit better. While transgender activists continue to promote the idea that men can be women by simply identifying as such, corporations are refusing to grow a spine. Refusing to admit the emperor has no clothes, they opt instead to stay silent. This is the reason I call it transanity, not to attack those struggling with gender confusion, but to expose the moral and intellectual bankruptcy of our culture. And at what point, as a society, do we cry foul? Pardon me. As documented in the New York Post at a meet including Princeton and Cornell on November 20th, Thomas had a time of 1 minute 43 seconds in the 200-meter freestyle and 4 minutes and 35 seconds in the 500-meter freestyle. Not only did Thomas win the events, but he smashed the women's Ivy League records. Had he been competing against other men on the national level, he would have been way off the best times, with a record for 200 meters being 1.29 and the record for 500 being 4 minutes and 7 seconds. But against women, it's a totally different story, with female national record for 200 meters being 1:39. So men are 10 seconds faster in the 100 meter, or in the 200 meter. In the 500 meter, they are, let's see, 21 seconds faster. No, wait a minute. 17 seconds faster. 7 and 17 is 24. So they're 10 seconds faster in the 200 and they're 17 seconds faster in the 500. So against the men, even as good as the male, even as a good male, let me get this out right. Even as a good male collegiate swimmer, he's nowhere near the top. But among the women, he's a superstar. But to repeat, he has no unfair advantage. And anyone who would make that outrageous claim is a transphobic bigot. Transphobic bigot. And if you dare to refer to Thomas as a biological male, which he is throughout his cellular structure and DNA, you will find yourself on hot water on social media. Dare to dead name him and refer to him as Will, you might just find yourself banned. And who are all the real victims in this? Again, the women. Martina Navratilova. She says that a guy can come in, say he's a woman, win all the titles, win all the championships, and then go back to making babies when he decides that he's no longer a woman. First of all, the women who he's competing have pushed themselves to the limit in the pool for years in order to fulfill their dreams, only to have those dreams smashed by a male. Second, the gender-confused children who will continue to be fed lies by a society from media to the medical profession and the world of sports, believing that they should start to transition as soon as possible. Third, Will Thomas himself deluded into believing that he can actually become a woman and that his athletic accomplishments should be hailed. Surely God has something better for him. One that will help him achieve wholeness from the inside out. One that will not involve hormone therapies and surgeries for the rest of his life. One that will make his athletic accomplishments all that more satisfying. But these days, to say bigger, stronger males should not be competing against smaller, less strong females is a sign of ignorance. And advocating for something better than surgeries and unnatural hormone therapies is a sign of hatred. And standing up for women's equality is a sign of bigotry. God help us to wake up to the reality before we completely self-destruct. Well, Mike, I hate to tell you, we're already in self-destruct mode, and it's not going to get better. All right, so we got 2 minutes, 2 minutes and a half to the end of the show. And Matt sent me a couple of stories that I might pick up on Monday. Federal appeals court blocks Joe Biden sanctuary city policies, I'm guessing. And so I'll pick up maybe on some of those on Monday. So thanks for joining in the show today, Jill. You was only here a short time, so you could hear your Dad Got Stuck in the Chimney song. Oh, man, does anybody check on old Dad? Or we're just going to leave him in the chimney all year round? Oh, good old Dad. He was trying to bring some presents down the chimney and got stuck, so let's just leave him there and forget about him. I don't know. So Jill, she should be happy. And thanks for Jill getting Matt tuned in to our show. I always say, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors. I'm an acquired taste. I grow on people. And Max used to say, yeah, so does fungus. So I can grow on people like that. Well, so anyway, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate your viewership and listenership. And Matt says, yep. But thanks for tuning in. Appreciate your patronage and tuning in to listen to the show. Hope you learned something. Hope you gained something from the show. And as always, I always tell you to tell your family, tell your friends, and tell your neighbors to tune into the show and give it a try, give it a whirl. And we'll be here again Monday, same bat time, same bat channel. So until Monday, this is Frank the Verse Thomas signing out here at
KPOG 102.9 FM, Grimes.